In this video, I'll be talking about some marijuana-based stocks for 2018. Now, I made this video quite a few months ago, and it was actually pretty popular, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it, but I really don't talk about too many like marijuana stocks specifically. I only make a video here and there. I think it's a really interesting industry, though. There's a couple of things I guess you could like have your opinions about whether you or not you want it legalized or not, but regardless of that, I still think it's a pretty interesting subject and industry, and definitely an interesting thing to get invested into. So one thing to note as well, in my videos I try to talk about stocks that are tradable on the Robinhood app, which some of these are, but a lot of marijuana stocks aren't. Honestly, Robinhood isn't very good for trading those, so if you have the Robinhood app like I do, unfortunately there won't be a whole lot that you can trade from there. And another thing to note as well, I'm from the US. I'm actually really close to the Canadian border. I live in New York, and I do know that marijuana is probably a lot better industry right now in Canada than it is in the US. Considering I think it's in like July of 2018 that marijuana is becoming like legalized all across the board in Canada. I know they have a lot of medical, as does the US, but having it legalized all across the board will obviously promote different sectors and industries more than just having it like medical in some states like the US, or only recreational in very few states like the US. So Canada is probably the better way to go if you're looking for marijuana stocks. I don't really know any other countries that like have like decent stock markets that you can invest in marijuana stocks besides Canada and some in the US. But anyways, getting right into it, the first one that's probably the most well-known stock and probably the better of all the stocks on this list is AbbVie, ticker symbol ABBV. And AbbVie I actually own in my Robinhood portfolio. If you follow my channel at all, you'll know that I own this. I don't necessarily own it because of its marijuana holdings or marijuana drugs, but AbbVie is a biopharmaceutical company, and they have a whole lot of products and drugs on the market. Now, they actually do have a marijuana-based drug on the market as well, so that's what kind of makes it different than a lot of other companies. If you're looking to invest in marijuana stocks, this is probably like the most safest and like stable company out there. One thing to note, its price right now when I'm making this video is around $118 or so. So a lot of people are looking at like marijuana penny stocks a lot of the time, but those are very, very risky, and most of them are probably biofarms that are in like very basic clinical stages. They're not like don't have products on the market or anything like that. So AbbVie has marijuana products on the market, or one marijuana product on the market, I should say, that probably beats out pretty much any other company you're looking at in the US anyways. I know there are quite a few in Canada that have drugs out on the market, but AbbVie, really good company overall if you look through its numbers and everything. Pretty large company, almost 200 billion market cap, PE ratio of 36, and they actually have a really nice dividend yield that they have been increasing pretty steadily. So that's another thing to look at. AbbVie is definitely one of the least riskiest marijuana-based companies out there. Well, not marijuana-based, but companies that have anything to do with marijuana at all. Now, AbbVie was a pretty high up, large market cap, blue chip biopharm company, and I do understand and recognize that there are a lot of smaller capped, probably in the 100 million level, biopharmaceutical marijuana-based companies. Most of those are OTCs, and most of those aren't tradable on the Robinhood app, so I'm not really going to talk about those too much. One that I do know of that, once again, you can't trade on the Robinhood app is Canopy. I actually think that that is one of the better ones out of all of them. One being because they have a relationship with a company I'll talk about later in the video, but I'm going to talk about that later. But I don't think buying penny stocks or buying very low value OTC marijuana-based stocks is very profitable or a good idea at all, for a handful of reasons. One, if you're trading them in the US, they're based on a lot of like FDA decisions and based on federal laws and policies, whether or not marijuana is going to become legal in certain states or certain areas, and at the medical level or the recreational level. So I definitely don't think that's a very good way to go. But that's just my opinion, my biased opinion. I don't know when marijuana is going to be legalized in the entire U.S. or if it ever will be. I know it's getting legalized more and more in every state, pretty much every election. At least one more state either gets it medically or recreationally legalized. And I honestly think the medical department of it, like the medical segment of it's going to be a lot bigger than the recreational segment of it. But because biofarms obviously have a huge hold on the U.S. economy. But anyways, I can make an entire video on my opinion about that. But moving on to the next company is Scotts Miracle-Gro. And this might be a company you don't think about related to marijuana, but obviously there's the buying, the selling of it, there's the distribution of it, there's the, I guess you could say, manufacturing or growing of it. And Scotts Miracle-Gro is kind of related to the growing and manufacturing of it, but it's more related to if you want to grow it in your own house, which you are allowed to if it's legal recreational in various states. And I don't think you can if it's legal medical anywhere, but in the states that have recreational, you are allowed to. So Scotts Miracle-Gro, right around $91 right now. They haven't had the best growth in the past year, had a bad earnings report, but one thing to note is that they're like marijuana business. It's not like the biggest segment of their business. It's like really like a small section of it. But if it were to get legalized in more states, it would probably be pretty, like, it's really the only company out there that could sell any of this stuff and that can sell it like legally and actually like decent materials. I guess you can do it yourself at your home and buy, not really the right materials, but Scotts Miracle-Gro actually has like the right materials for it. So it pretty much has monopoly on that specific part of the business, which would really just be the homegrown segment of it. But overall, not a bad company either. 5 billion market cap, 24 PE ratio, and it has a little bit of dividend yield too, right around 2%. So that's a pretty good dividend yield as well. And if marijuana became more legalized recreationally around the U.S., Scotts Miracle-Gro would definitely have a big impact on that and would probably increase quite a bit. But not to say that their sales are going to actually increase quite a bit, but probably be more based off of speculation because they're really only the only company doing it right now. But anyways, the next company I'll talk about is I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce their name, but ticker symbol STZ, and it's Constellus maybe brands, like Constellation brands. I don't know if it's actually like Constellation, but if that's how you say it or not, but you might not recognize the parent company, but they own a lot of beers, pretty much only beers like Corona, Modelo. None of these other ones I really recognize. Some wine, some Svedka they own as well. They just own a lot of alcoholic beverages. And how this is related to marijuana, they're actually coming out with a marijuana infused beer, which I think is maybe not the best combination out there, but I'm sure it would probably end up selling very well. But I could definitely see that having some major issues going with FDA approvals and stuff like that, because people, I know you can't even have like caffeine and alcohol together anymore, let alone having two drugs combined at the same time. Probably might not work out super well if it ever actually hits the markets, but the idea is there right now, and this is like one of the few companies out there that once again aren't necessarily like a biofarm company, but they are related to marijuana. But this would obviously only be related to the recreational sale of marijuana. But another thing to note about this really overall idea of marijuana infused beer, I could definitely see snacks being infused with it more, but doing alcoholic drinks, I'm not 100% sure how well that's going to work, because if you think about that, you're not going to sell that at a supermarket like you would, or like a convenience store like you would normal beer. You'd probably have to sell it at like a marijuana like distribution center or whatever they call them. But so I'm not 100% sure how well that would actually work out like legally, and just like probably won't end up very good. But it definitely is really interesting, and something that I'm not sure if they have other places like in like Canada or something like that, and I've actually never heard of this until I looked it up. But I believe that's really the only way they're related to the marijuana industry right now, is they're looking to try to do that. So those are 4 companies. The other one that they're doing this with is Canopy Growth. So Canopy Growth would be the one they're kind of partnering with on this. Canopy Growth is not available on the Robinhood app, so that's why I'm not going to really talk about it too much, but that's the one Constellation Brands is partnering with to do this marijuana infused beer. So that would be very interesting to see if that actually pans out or not. So the 4 companies I really talked about was Scotts Miracle-Gro, AbbVie, Canopy Growth, and then Constellation Brands. But anyways, that's it for the video. Like I said before, the marijuana industry is really risky, and there's definitely not a whole lot of stocks on the Robinhood app that you could purchase that are related to that. But there are other stocks if you go to Canada, want to invest in the Canadian market, or if you decide to do a different brokerage besides Robinhood, you'll definitely have a higher options or choices than what are on the Robinhood app. But at the same time, those ones are probably relatively risky, and I personally probably wouldn't invest in them. But anyways, guys, that is it for the video. If you haven't checked out my channel before, I talk about investing and the stock market. So if you're interested in that, definitely head over onto my channel, Investing Potentials, and consider subscribing. And also leave a comment below what you think about the marijuana stock industry and if you own any stocks or not. And leave a like if you enjoyed the video. But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed.